Hi, Psych 101 students. It's time for your week 5 check-in, which is actually our last week. So you are almost there. We've just got this last week to go. In terms of that, it is basically 4 chapters. The first chapter is social psychology, which is really fascinating. It's actually one of my favorite areas of psychology, and if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably get my doctorate in social psychology. I think their research studies are fascinating and often hilarious. And then we're going to talk about stress and lifestyle, so mostly about stress, and then we'll talk a little bit about what is known as the psychology of well-being a bit, so look for that. And then we'll get into psychological disorders and treatment and therapy. So again, my doctorate is in counseling psychology, so I have a lot of background in this. I've done counseling, I've been a therapist. So I think those are, really fascinating areas. And so it's kind of a nice section to end with. I think it's some of my favorite stuff. Otherwise, it's going to look a lot like what we've been doing. Each of the chapters will have a little quiz. They'll have a muddiest point. We'll have one discussion question, and then we're not doing a deep dive this section, partly because you have your research project due. And then you'll have exam 4. And again, exam 4 is not cumulative like all the exams. It's just going to cover the chapters in that section. So it's just these 4 chapters, and there is no final exam. There's no comprehensive exam. So you just got that's the big stuff. You've got your final exam and then your research project. I do also want to let you know a couple things in terms of looking ahead. So let me minimize a couple of these for us. We'll go here. So we're on section 4 now. So these are our areas. The one main thing that I want to point out for you is that at the very end, you'll see extra credit options. So there is an option to do some extra credit in this class. It's very little. Well, it's very little, very much. It sort of depends on your perspective. I don't believe in extra credit, partly because I know a lot of students, especially like in high school, they get used to using extra credit to make up for all the work of the class. So they just don't show up to class, don't do any of the homework, and at the end of the semester, they're like, hey, what can I do to get a good grade in this class? And my response to that is, take the class over and do all the things that I asked you to do throughout the semester. So it's not anywhere near enough to make up for just not doing the work, because that's what the class is. The class is, I spread it out, I set it up, because that's how you're best going to learn it. So there's no way to make up that work with a couple assignments at the end of the semester. But what I do offer is a little bit of extra credit. It is 4% towards your final grade, which, isn't totally small. But it's not too big that I feel like you can make up a ton of work. It is enough, however, to bump people who are relatively close to the next grade up a grade level. So if you were at an 85.5, which is a good solid B, this would be enough to bump you up to an 89.5, and you would now be an A, right? So if you were at a 75.5, it would now bump you up to being a B. If you were at a 65.5, you would now be able to pass the class with a C. So as you'll see from this, I do round up. So 89.5 and higher is an A, but an 89.4 is a B. So one of the reasons I offer the extra credit, even though I'm not a big fan of it, is because I feel bad for students who are close. Like if you get an 89.3 in this class, that's a B. That sucks, because you're like just so close to actually having a completely different grade, an A. And so I want to allow the students who are that close to bump up a grade. And so then they just do a little bit extra work and they can do that. But if you're below 85.5, you're going to get a B. And so if you're at an 89.4, which is a B, with extra credit, I don't feel as bad for giving you the B, because you really aren't at an A. The extra credit is the only thing that would have gotten you even close. You're a solid B. I feel okay with that. So I just want you to be aware that the other piece of this is each of these options is worth 2% towards your final grade. but you can only pick 2. I'm only going to grade 2, so you can only get up to 4%. So if you do the extra credit test and the research participation, you can earn up to 4%. Or you could do the creative expression and the research participation. If you only just do, let's say, the creative expression, maybe you just need 2 percentage points. That's all you'll need to do. So there's 4 options here. Basically, if you get full points, you will get the full 2%. Now, the extra credit test is 20 multiple choice questions, and it is more cumulative. So it's just an online exam. If you like to do exams, that's an easy one to do. Just know that in order to get the full 2%, you have to get 20 out of 20. So if you get, let's say, 16 out of 20, that is 1.6 points of extra credit. And that will count as one of your extra credits. And then let's say you get the creative expression one and you do that and get 2 points. Now you'll get 3.6 total extra credit points. And you can't do a third one or a fourth one to make up for that. Okay, so if you do any more than 2, I will only grade 2. So check them out. Some of them are kind of fun. Some of them are a little more, like they're tests. One is actually just to be a research participant. So they're pretty interesting. So hopefully you'll find those useful. And again, if you need a little bit extra credit, that can help you. Other than that, I've been working to try to catch up with some of the grading. Definitely got behind in that and a little bit underwater with it. So I'm starting to come up for air a little bit. So I'm getting closer to catching up with that. What you're probably hopefully noticing is with things like the discussions and the deep dives, I'm a pretty easy grader. As long as you do what I ask, you'll get the full points. Sometimes people just aren't quite doing what I ask, and so they'll get some points knocked off. So your grades should be getting closer and closer to your, where you really are at in the class. The one thing I would say is that everything is weighted differently. And so sometimes, with some of the assignments, your grade can jump around a bit. But at this point, we've got, almost 3/4 of the grades in by now, although I still have some grading to do. But you've turned in about 3/4 of the assignments. Where your grade's at now is a pretty good predictor of where you're going to be. Also, for those of you who are new to Canvas, you can, when you go look at your grade book, you can select your grades and replace the unentered grades with a test score. So most of you should have most of this stuff already entered. So you've got all your scores, and then your total grade up here would be up here. You can unclick this because this says calculate based only on graded assignments. So at some point, your official grade is with this unchecked. That is your official standing in the class. So at the very end of class, you want to make sure that is unchecked. What that essentially does is for anything that there's no grade entered, it enters it as a 0. And so what you can do is once, we've got, again, about 3/4 of these eventually by hopefully the end of this weekend will have been graded. You can then go in and say, okay, well, what do I need to get on exam 4 to get whatever grade? And you can type in a grade. So what would happen? What would my grade be if I get 100? It's called a what if score. And so then you can kind of look down here and say, okay, well, then I'd be 100% for exams, but that's, again, based on only what's been graded so far, and I can uncheck that. And now that is my official grade, and you see it drops way down to a 12.5%. So because I'm only getting 25% of the grades. So what looks like the exam score is worth, it looks like it's worth 50% of your grade. So that is 1/4 of that because we got a 25% there. So certain things are weighted differently, and that's all shown here. Okay, so that's just something to take a look at. But otherwise, as always, reach out to me if you have any questions. And otherwise, you just got few more, a little less than a week at this point in the class, and then you guys will be done. So again, reach out to me if you have any questions.